make videos about animals, animal rights, and trying to promote, trying to inspire people to make better choices for animals. Everyone loves dogs, but they eat cows and pigs and chickens, and every advertisement is to, hey, eat a cow, eat a pig, eat a chicken, and it's geared for failure.
How could somebody love their house pets and still eat animals?
So my mum had already educated me on the issues and the horrors of egg and dairy farming, and how the meat industry is, they are basically the same. Every single animal from the dairy or egg industry goes into the slaughterhouse.
What about things like fake meat? Like, do you think that's ethically something that's a benefit or a disbenefit to the animals? What about making meat out of animal cells? Do you think that's a benefit or a disbenefit to the animals? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I have an amazing guest on today. I'm so excited about this. Is David Rams. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
David, everything I promote and think is beneficial to our health and well-being on every level, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, often comes down to the things I see you teaching in your videos on YouTube. Can you please give a brief introduction to yourself and what you do, and then we'll get more into the details?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I make videos about animals, animal rights, and trying to promote, trying to inspire people to make better choices for animals. My background is, well, depends how far back you want to go, but I guess the most interesting things about me is that I was born and raised as a vegetarian for ethical reasons. And it's quite a rarity. Usually people are born and raised vegetarian for religious reasons or for health reasons. But no, my mum raised me vegetarian for ethical reasons. So I got a pretty good, lucky start in life. And I suppose that those kind of early lessons drove me to always have an interest in animals and a compassion for animals, a lot of love for animals throughout my entire life, and led me to where I am today, where now that's what I do full time. I make videos speaking in defense of animals. I try to convince people to make changes that help make a better world for animals, and I try to also get out there and put out some counterpoints to some of the lies and manipulation out there that's trying to convince people not to do that, which unfortunately, where there's a lot of money, there's a lot of people who are trying to counteract the things that people like you and I are saying, and they're quite successful at it because they have more money than we do. If we had as much money as they had, we'd be a lot more successful with getting our points out there, but unfortunately we are the underdogs in this, and so that's in a nutshell what I do.
Okay, so when you say you were raised vegetarian for ethical reasons, tell us about your parents and what that means. Is your parents, do you have other siblings, and like how far did they take it back in the day?
It's just my mum. So my mum raised
Okay.
us pretty much alone, and she was an ethical vegetarian from the age of 16 herself. Her story is that she was on the highway in the UK, and a truck came past, and on this truck there were a load of lambs, and she kind of had this sobering realization that of where they were going. Right, it was a slaughter truck, and that was her turning point to say, "I'm never going to pay for that." That was her moment, and so sometime later. I'm the first of my the first kid, and then I have two younger brothers, and she raised me and both my younger brothers as vegetarians for those ethical reasons because she was against the killing of animals. The only reason she wasn't eating vegan and living as a vegan is because she just hadn't considered those things yet. As a lot of vegetarians are in that boat, I think. They see the obvious issue with the ethics of killing, but don't realize with the milk industry and the egg industry, there's a lot of killing and abuse there as well. And so yeah, so we were all fortunate, all three of us. And then with my youngest brother, because there's quite a big age gap between me and my young brother and the youngest, she actually raised him vegan most of his life. So vegetarian for the first couple of years, and then she went vegan and then raised him vegan as well. So she took it all the way, actually, thankfully for all of us.
Well, are your younger siblings still vegan or vegetarians today?
Yes, yeah. The middle brother, he's still veggie, and the youngest brother is vegan. My younger brother is still veggie, despite knowing everything that we know about why to be a vegan. But you know as well as I know,
Sure.
people can be tricky. So
Sure.
I still have hope that he's still young. I have hope that one day he'll make the click and make a change.
Now, besides just diet, when we hear the word vegan, it goes way
Mm,
beyond just food because there's so
mhm,
many animals that are harmed in so many other industries. Did your mom, I know you say she did the best she could according to her knowledge at the time with what she
mhm.
had, but did she take it beyond, like, I'm not going to drive a car because the rubber tires are made of animals and things like that? Or did she, where's the line for
Hmm.
her and where is it for you?
For her, so yeah, she actually she took it pretty far. Actually, she was pretty knowledgeable. Just not on the dairy and egg industries. There's less knowledge on that, but she had a lot of knowledge on animal testing. Actually, she took me when I was about 12 years old to an anti-animal testing protest. That was my first ever experience of fighting for animals as one of these anti-vivisection protests show. So anything that was animal tested, she tried to make sure she was up to date, and we had nothing that was tested on animals. And leather was always a an odd one because I don't know if you know. Well, I mean, I don't know how long you've been in this world yourself, but early vegetarians used to kind of say, well, leather's a byproduct, so it's not really the same, right? So there was this kind of notion that leather's not that bad. So initially, leather wasn't a problem for my mum, but then obviously she, got the got the truth on that and realized actually a lot of animals are literally killed because they're profitable for leather as well as meat. If it was only for meat, a lot of these animals, a lot of these industries wouldn't exist. They need to make as much profit as possible to justify their existence, right? And leather's a big, huge part of that, actually. So leather came later, but yeah, she was pretty strict with, especially animal testing and meat. And trying to think if there was anything else, but I think those were the two that from day one, those were the two most important things for her. And for me, you asked for me as well. How far do I take it?
Yes.
It's an interesting question. I don't really know that there's lots of gray areas and kind of things that we could get into that would probably not be so useful, I would say, because we just get into the realm of philosophical, philosophy. Basically, we get into the realm of that. As in, how far can you go? And the logical conclusion would be, well, the only way to be 100% good for animals is to not be here, right? So I don't know how far you would go, but for me, yeah, I'd say, look, I avoid animal products in all the food I consume. I avoid animal products in the things that I wear on my body. Are there things that I do in a daily basis that could cause harm to animals? Well, of course there are, because it's impossible not to. Um, yeah, so I guess that would be, my answer to that in a I suppose a more vague sense.
Okay. Are you, and you are married, right?
Yes.
Do you have children?
No.
Okay.
No.
So from a marriage standpoint, let's say you're a vegan and somebody's future wife is a vegan, they get married, and let's say within the marriage, one of the people, whatever reasons they're doing it for, whether it's health or ethical, whatever reasons, one of the two people in a relationship change their thinking and they want
Mm,
to be either a vegetarian or even possibly eat meat and
mm.
not just vegetarian. Uh, what do you think does that create in your eyes a tremendous challenge for the other person that still has a strong passion to be vegan?
So wait, you're saying one of them? Wait, so
Like, where
the
does
some?
relationship like some people say, well, I'll never date or marry
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
who's not a vegan. But what if you marry somebody who's a vegan and they change? Like, do
So
you
wait,
see
so
any
you
challenges in
marry
that?
you two vegans get married and one of them doesn't want to be vegan
Yeah,
anymore. Is that what
yeah,
you're saying? Oh,
yeah.
right, okay. I mean, yeah, it's gonna depend on the individual. And this, some people would be disappointed, but it wouldn't. They would say, "Well, I'm going to keep doing my thing," and that would probably likely be somebody who is eating plant based for health reasons or for environmental reasons. But if somebody is actually a vegan and they're focused on freeing animals and freeing animals from all of these horrors that they go through and all of the things that we do to them, then it would be a lot more difficult for that person for sure, because they're literally the person that they are the most close to is now a part of the problem that they have dedicated a big part of their life to trying to stop. Like when you make that personal decision to become a vegan, that is a big move for an individual to live out. Like you commit to living your life in a way to try to make the world a better place for animals. Sharing a bed with somebody who is literally the opposite of that and trying to make it worse for animals, even unknowingly so, right? If they don't think they are, the fact would be that they would be choosing to do that at this point. And especially that it's not like they're unknowing actually, because they do know, they know everything you know, right? It would be quite hurtful, I imagine, for somebody in a close relationship. I can imagine it would cause them some stress. But in their defense, though, to play the devil's advocate here, it's I always compare it to this, right? It's not. I don't think it's fair to chastise people who don't go to the gym, right? Who don't train, who don't keep themselves healthy. I don't think it's fair to chastise them because the world is literally designed to encourage them to be as unhealthy as possible. Like every single store you go to is it's like 90% crap in these shops, right? The things you can get from the vending machine at work, 90% crap. When you go home, what are you faced with? You have a TV. What can you do on the TV? Literally, you can access absolutely anything you want in the click of a button. And guess what? You don't feel like cooking? No worries. Just order it on your phone. It'll come right to your door and it's going to be crap, right? And so, in a world that's designed to make you fail at being healthy, I don't blame you for not being healthy, even though it's not a justification. You get off your ass and sort it out, right? But I don't blame you for falling into an unhealthy trap. It's kind of, it hurts me to say because I really do care about animals, and I feel like there's a sense of me feels like I'm letting them down by saying this, but it is hard to blame people who then go back on their commitment to animals because the world is designed to push you that way. You don't go out into the street and everyone's like, oh, hey, we all love animals and we're all vegan. It's the opposite. Everyone loves dogs, but they eat cows and pigs and chickens, and every advertisement is to, hey, eat a cow, eat a pig, eat a chicken, and it's geared for failure.
Yeah,
So it
I
doesn't
find
surprise me that people
sure.
change back.
I find most of all of this is a cultural thing. It's like here we
Hmm.
love our dogs, but we eat cows. But in other countries, they love their cows but eat their dogs. It's a
That's
really
true. That's
cultural
true.
thing, the way people are brought up. But there are some communities around the world culturally that brought up vegetarian
Hmm.
or something in certain parts of the world,
Hmm.
and they have a very high regard for animals. They worship them on a certain level. So let me ask you, in all your interviews, and everybody, I want to encourage everybody to get to David's YouTube channel. It's absolutely wonderful, the videos there. But in all your videos, you look at the vegan topic, does it come up at all? Do you ever interview people about veganism in terms of the Bible and what happens with that? Does that ever come up in your interviews?
Yeah, of course. I've interviewed Cam Waters, who directed Christspiracy. I've interviewed um, a reverend as well on my channel recently, a practicing reverend who is a vegan. And so it comes up. I've invited some people on to specifically talk about these topics, and both of those videos. I have actually two videos with Cam and one with Reverend Philip Avare on my channel. So definitely recommend people to check that out if this is an interest of yours. All were incredible interviews, and I learned a lot about not necessarily the Bible. The Bible, to be totally honest with you, I find the Bible less interesting than I find the teachings of Jesus in the Bible, or outside of the Bible, the things said about Jesus. That interests me more because I'm more personally more interested in the historical elements of Jesus and what he did and why he did the things he did in their relation to animals, which seems to be that there's been some revelations recently in that his views on animals were quite strong, based on what Cam Waters at least had been researching over the last 7 years, and the theologians he'd been speaking to that have been looking at this for decades. So yeah, I find the topic really interesting.
Sure. One of the things I don't see come up often, and I have friends in all different kind of belief systems about the Bible and not. But one of the things I always think, like for on a practical level, I say, how could somebody love their house pets and still eat animals on a regular basis? I ask people that, and it's just
Mm,
a question I often have. But another question I have is people that love animals and have such a high passion to save animals because they have such a high regard for life, but at the same time they don't have any issue with abortion or something like this.
mm,
And do you see there any correlation between that, like about life in general, and how could
mhm,
people not only love their house pets but eat animals, but how could people love the animals' lives and care so much for animals but still support something like abortion? In your mind, is it
mhm,
just like, well, those people truly believe life starts when the baby's out of the womb, or
mm.
how do you justify something, not you, but them, see them justify?
Yeah, well, I don't know. So I think there's a maybe some misunderstanding when it comes to these debates. I think a lot of people are they're less debating, they're less in support of it, and they're more in support of the right to do it because of their issues with bodily autonomy and the rights around a woman's body, which even though a lot of people would disagree with the take on this, it's undeniable that there is a long history of men attempting to control women's bodies, right? And I think that's why it becomes such a sensitive topic, and the the aspect of the unborn child is kind of lost to the politics of it sometimes, I feel, and to the the women's rights arguments around it. But my general response to this, and I would recommend that anyone who's out there trying to make a change in the world and trying to make the world a better place for animals, when this topic comes up, I've seen far too many times people try and hold the line on, well, here's why it's different and here's why it's okay to abort babies. And I find that to be, even if you believe that, it's an incredibly bad way to deal with this topic. What I personally say to this is, look, regardless of what I think about whether it should be allowed or not, that's irrelevant. All you need to know about me is that I live my life in a way in so that I will never have to make that decision. And that's something I do because I don't want to ever be in a position where I have to potentially decide to do that, not only to do that to an unborn child, but to do that to my wife. It's not only the unborn child that gets harmed through this. Um, it's the person that's done it as well, the potential mother, not just physically but also psychologically, the distress, the harm this does. And so the best course of action is just simply live in a way that reduces the risk of that to the point where it's practically impossible, and we won't need to even have this conversation anymore. So I really do feel strongly that's the angle to go if you're going to have this discussion as somebody with with animals in mind. If you're trying to convince people,
Sure, absolutely. Now, have you ever in your life, you said you were brought up vegetarian. Have you
mm.
ever eaten an animal flesh in your whole life?
I have only on maybe one or two occasions. Once as a child, on purpose through children, peer pressure, school, very unpleasant times. School. I don't think I've not met many. I've only met a handful of people who actually went through school and came out unscathed. I wasn't one of them. School was a rough time for me, and then only after that, accidentally. So I believe I can only think of really one other occasion where I ordered a pizza and was very specific about it to be vegetarian without cheese even. So like just basically no meat, no cheese, and they brought it out with no cheese, but under the tomato sauce there was chicken meat. And believe it or not, this was in Nepal, of all places, right? Nepal, and it was actually in Lumbini, the birthplace of the Buddha. And I couldn't believe, of all the places for somebody to serve me an animal, it was literally the birthplace of the Buddha, right next to a meditation center. And but when I pointed out that the mistake they'd made, I think they assumed because I was a foreigner that I wanted chicken. No, they looked like as if their lives were over. The emotion in their faces when I told them they'd made this mistake, because to them this is very serious.
Yeah.
Unlike in a Western restaurant, this is for them a religious problem, and I think they were worried that I was going to do something drastic. They were so apologetic. So but it didn't make it any
So
easier
how
for
could
me.
they
It was
even
pretty horrible.
justify like serving that even to a foreigner because if it's that means that much to them, you know?
I know. I think I don't know. I think they're probably just so used to having Westerners coming around and wanting to eat meat. They just judged me. And when I pointed it out, they suddenly realized, oh no, this is actually that's a big mistake to make, and they'll probably never make it again.
Yeah.
And to be, it was only it was one bite, and I realized, thankfully, it wasn't any more than that.
Sure. So, how old are you when you went vegan, when you stopped eating all dairy and products from animals?
Yeah, this was about I believe around 2009, and I say I believe, I don't have like an official stamped date on it, because growing up vegetarian to me it wasn't a really big deal. It was just something I decided to do after like a week or so of thinking about it. But around 2009 it was, yeah.
In 2009, how did your diet change? Were you eating a lot of like eggs and milk up to that point and
Yeah.
stopped?
Yeah. It was these were staples. Cheese and eggs was a staple for me like every single day.
Was it your knowledge that you gained about the harmful impact to animals in the industry of the dairy industry that made you go vegan from vegetarian?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. So my mum had already educated me on the issues and the horrors of egg and dairy farming, and how the meat industry is they are basically the same. Every single animal from the dairy or egg industry goes into the slaughterhouse. So if killing animals is an issue for you, which it was for me, then you should have an issue with those things. And that's before we even get to the things they do within those farms anyway, before they get to anywhere near a slaughterhouse, spending their whole lives inside. The grotesque things that happen to their bodies because of how they're bred. Just horrors, just abject horror. And so, yeah, I knew about that. And at the time, though, one of the things that pushed me over the edge was actually with eating dairy. When I was eating, because I guess I was eating so much of it, it started to cause problems for me. And it was around that time, with the kind of with the knowledge I had from my mum and of the horrors of everything, and also with me starting to actually not really digest dairy very well, I started to just say, hey, do you know what? I mean, it's kind of odd that I'm drinking a cow's breast milk. It's kind of odd that I'm eating a chicken's egg. And it kind of all just pieced together and just said to me, like, you know what, there's so many reasons right now to stop this. And it was only some time later where I'd say, after being a vegan for quite some time, so many years, where I started to really dig deep into the practices and the farming side of things, and to learn about what really goes on in these places. And that was it. That was it then. I mean, I was already committed, but that was like a real lifelong commitment now that I'll never be a part of that.
When you stopped consuming the animal products, how quickly did your health turn around after stopping that?
Yeah, bloating pretty much stopped immediately as soon as I removed the dairy. I was having really, really painful bloating pretty much on a daily basis with when I was doing dairy. I'd been diagnosed even with what's it called, IBS at the time,
Okay.
and that they were trying to give me medication for it, and the only thing that helped actually was removing the dairy. So I clearly had some kind of intolerance, and that might have been self-inflicted, or it might have been there. Actually, no, I take that back. My dad actually did say that when I was a baby, I'd seemed like I had some intolerance to dairy, but I think the doctors recommend you just to keep on. They recommend just keep giving it to him. He'll get used to it. And it didn't. So
Yeah.
I don't think many people do actually.
And a lot of people that get on a vegan diet, short term they do fine. Long term they start, if they're not doing it the right way, they might start getting into deficiencies. And do you take vitamins or things like this, or do you just eat a vegan junk food diet? How do you do it on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, around the kind of deficiencies and the vitamin side of things. So, I mean, one thing I'll say is that a lot of people see supplements as the devil, and the thing is, the supplement industry is worth billions of dollars, and that's because most average people are lazy and they take a supplement so they don't have to think about all these things, and so we can live a better life. And vegans are no different. The only difference being the only one difference being that, say, for example, with vitamin B12, if you're consuming plant-based diet, it would be very difficult to get vitamin B12 without eating some fortified food or taking a supplement. But it's not much different on the other side of the coin. It's not much different in the people who aren't vegan, because vitamin B12, it is in some animal foods, but it's not in high amounts. And the only reason it's in those animal foods is because the animals are supplemented. So, in general, it's probably a good idea for most people to take a B12 supplement. And with vitamin D3, it's a similar situation. Vitamin D is something that, if you're outdoors a lot, you're not going to need to take a supplement or even focus on it in your food. But most of us aren't outdoors a lot. Most of us work inside, and when work finishes, we stay inside. Yeah, people go to the beach and stuff like that, maybe, but there's only some parts of the world where people actually spend a lot of time outside, and so it's generally recommended to make sure you're getting vitamin D. And again, a lot of people, just to cover the bases, will just take a vitamin for it, and vegans again are no different to that. And so for me personally, yeah, they're the two that are non-negotiables. B12 and D3 both are available as vegan synthesized versions of those vitamins. And I do a multivitamin as well. I'm not on it right now. I'm on a little break from it, but yeah, I've got a multivitamin as well. And it's just, again, it's due to laziness. I could do without the multivitamin and eat a really well planned, varied, healthy diet. But to be honest with you, I just don't really get a kick out of that. I find cooking and preparing these things quite boring, and so I'll eat relatively healthy, but take the multivitamin to cover those bases, and the B12 and the D3 to cover the most important bases.
Sure. And do you get your blood work checked?
Yeah, yeah. Last time I got it checked, everything was fine, within range. Yeah, yeah. The
When you
last
met
time was
your
only a couple of
wife,
months ago.
was she vegetarian or vegan at the time?
Vegan, vegan.
Okay, so she was vegan before you, or you hadn't been married more than 15 years?
We met because we're both activists, so
Okay.
we'd both been vegan for a long time before meeting.
If you had children and or you were taking care of children, where would you try to best put them where they weren't exposed to these thoughts that it's normal to eat animals? Do you have
Mm.
a suggestion that people can do that? Would they go to a particular environment or particular community where or do you just gotta just be honest with the children and teach them, look, this is the way the world is and you're gonna be surrounded by it. So how would you do it?
I think that in the cases that I've seen where somebody has been sheltered, raised in a community, I've seen many of those people rebel hard. So they were raised in a community where everyone was veggie or whatever it is. They were raised in some kind of maybe in some kind of almost cult-like kind of community, segregated from the rest of the world with their own guidelines and their own things. And I've seen a lot of people reject that, and they feel like they were betrayed by their community by being sheltered away from the real world. And so I don't think I would recommend that necessarily, to do it that way. I can only speak for myself at this moment. I've not researched this heavily, but for myself and the way I was raised, my mum raised me quite um, honestly, I suppose, with these kinds of things. So I would ask a lot of questions and I would get a lot of answers. And the answers were often quite, brutal. Some people would argue that a child shouldn't be hearing and seeing the kind of things that I was hearing and seeing at that age. For example, I remember from a very young age, everybody was having these birthday parties, and I don't know about you over in the States, but in England, when there was a kid's birthday party in the 90s, it would be at McDonald's pretty much. They'd rent out a certain area of McDonald's, and then you'd have all the Happy Meals and stuff. And I could never have a Happy Meal. And so I was kind of started to get a bit annoyed about it. And I confronted my mum about it and said, why can't I have this Happy Meal? And she told me a lot of times that we don't do that. It's animals. We don't do that. But around the age of maybe 10, as she realized that she needed something more to teach me this lesson, right? No, the words weren't hitting as hard as they used to, because I wasn't a real little child anymore. And so she got a PETA video, a video from PETA, and put it on. And it was just a complete expose of the meat industry and the farming. And as a 10-year-old, obviously this was really deeply disturbing stuff. But I can tell you that I immediately understood why I was never going to eat a Happy Meal, and I didn't want to anymore. That was the important part. It wasn't just that I was being told this is what we do. I had been shown this is why what we do. And every time I thought about meat and animal products, I just thought about that video. And I said, I'm never doing that. I went so far that I started taking flyers and leaflets to my school to give to my, schoolmates and my teachers, because it infuriated me as a child to see that this was happening to animals. So I would say to parents, don't be afraid of telling them the truth, and obviously gauge it on their maturity. I was quite a mature 10-year-old. I mean, I was obviously still a little kid, but I was a little bit more advanced, I think, mentally, and a bit more grown up. And so if your kid is at that point where they're asking complex questions and they're demanding some kind of more tangible answer, well, then give them a proper answer and show them something. Then don't treat them like a little tiny little baby that's going to get broken by seeing these things. They need to see these things so they can formulate their own opinions.
Or from your viewpoint on another topic, we spoke about how far would you take it earlier. Are you the type of
Mm.
person that, like, if you saw a little like a bug outside, like the last thing your mind would think about is stepping on it or killing it? Would you do everything you possible to like gently remove it from your house? Like how, what do you think about life from that standpoint? Or are you
Yeah.
just like for life under any circumstance? How do you feel about that?
Look, I think in general, there are many, many circumstances where you cannot avoid uh, harming some lives, whether they be in the animal kingdom and minuscule like flies and bugs and insects, or whether they be in the plant kingdom. Like if you're going to cut down a tree because you need to build there or something like that, there's just unavoidable things that we have to do. We have to cause destruction and I suppose commit acts of violence, either directly or indirectly. And there are occasions where it has to be done. It's unavoidable. But in general, I would say it's good practice to avoid it when you can. And so, yeah, if I have a fly in the house or a spider in the house, they're not going to. Why would I kill them? Why would? And I know people do it, and I know it's just kind of a mindless act. But when you really think about it, and really kind of think about what you're doing, it might only. It's only a spider. It's only a fly. I mean, what is their existence? I mean, really, right? Okay, I get the idea, but why would you commit an act of violence against this tiny little harmless creature? What kind of what example are you setting for anyone, any kid who sees that, for example? And what example are we setting for the rest of our world when we will kill just out of convenience? Oh, it's more convenient to kill them than to just open the window and get them out. Really? Even if their life is not particularly meaningful to you, is that reason just to kill? So no, I don't see the point in killing even these what could be called insignificant lives to a lot of people. Why kill them? Just get them out of the house. It's easy. And the same goes, it's kind of unusual to say this, the same goes for plants, though. I'm not going to go out of my way to massacre a forest of trees, or just like take down loads of, why? But of course, you drive a car, you take a plane, kills lots of insects. You have to do these things at some point or another. And at some point when you're building a house, you might have to clear the land, right? But in general, it's, as I'm saying, it's just a good idea to avoid these things as much as you can.
Well, when you're eating a vegan diet, let's say, I mean, if you find out that the company, even though they're doing their best to for the for the animals, if there's something they're doing in that practice that's not best for the animals, I mean,
Mm.
would you no longer support that vegan company if you found an issue like that?
I think it would depend on the issue, to be
Okay.
honest. I mean, I found out, for example, that Oatly. I found out that the brand Oatly over in the UK, they sell their used oats because they have the waste product. The oats are the waste product because they only filter the water through it to get oat milk, right? And so they have this waste product. I heard they were selling it to piggeries, pig farms, so the piggeries could use it as animal feed. Now, I don't particularly like that for obvious reasons, but I mean, I don't know if they weren't buying it from Oatly, they'd be buying it somewhere else. So it's a case of, does it really make a difference? Does it cause actual? I don't particularly like that. It's not necessarily helping animals, but it's also not really harming them either. So it would depend on the issue at hand. To be honest with you, it'd be, yeah, dependent on that.
Well, I eat something called a raw food diet or a raw vegan diet, and a lot of it
Mm.
is sprouted foods, that's living foods that I'm growing in my own house, and I just know when I eat a lot of the processed vegan food, I just know whether it's from the plastics on an environmental standpoint or everything else, how the more you break away from what's common in this world, the more you, like you said, putting yourself in a position to not contribute to that. So
Mm.
it definitely helps on every level. So on that same level, what about things like fake meat? Like, do you think
Hmm.
that's ethically something that's a benefit or a disbenefit to the animals?
A benefit. The reason being is you've so we have a population of probably closing in on 9 billion people, and it's not getting smaller, it's getting bigger and bigger. And we're getting more and more convenient with everything. And I don't think we're going to go backwards. I know there are a lot of people out there that are kind of fighting to push back on consumerism and capitalism. And I think it's a losing battle. I think the trap door is closed behind us, and it's probably just going to keep escalating until one day I don't know, the planet explodes or we run out of resources. I don't have much hope for things going the other way and becoming more simplistic. So, with that being the case, with if our focus or my focus is to try and make is trying to deal with the world we have and make it better for animals within the kind of constraints that we have in the world. That's what I'm focused on. And obviously, people like burgers, they like steaks, they like pizzas, they like these things. Most people don't want to give up these things. The occasional people, there'll be people like you out there that have the willpower and the means and the right things. The stars align, you know what I mean. And the people like you out there with this type of personality will change, and you'll do things that way, the way you are. but you're the one in a million, one in 100 million, right? The vast majority of the rest of the world is never going to try and live the way you live. And so I try to do what I do with that in mind. And so yeah, I'll promote the meat alternatives and the Beyond Burgers, and I even eat them sometimes myself as well. I don't have any issue with them, and I think that they're a necessity if we want to make a better world for animals, because the number one thing that puts animals in the worst positions on earth is factory farming, and that isn't going anywhere until something replaces it. And there is no other version of farming that can replace it, right? In terms of, if people keep eating as much meat as they are and as much animal products as they are, there is no other form of farming that can replace that demand. But vegan versions of those things can replace the demand. Actually, we can do that with our current resources. But there's not enough land to farm in any other way other than factory farming, right? So that's a dead end. We have to switch to the vegan alternative if we want a better world for animals.
Well, it's most likely people aren't going to do it, but people can start homesteading, and then that'll. But it's not very unlikely people would do
Wouldn't be
that.
enough land. Wouldn't
Yeah.
be enough land. If
And,
everyone, if people were consuming the same amount of animal products as they are now, and it didn't reduce, there's not enough land on
yeah,
Earth.
then it reduce. Now, what about
It has to be
the
factory
industry?
farming.
Not just plant-based meat, but or fake meat, but what about the making meat out of animal cells? Do you think that's a
Hmm.
benefit or a disbenefit to the animals?
Benefit, because for the same reason as the vegan meat. And I know a lot of people take an ethical stance with that, and they don't like it because the original lab meat, they did use cells from animals, and there was some animal testing involved. At this point, I think that's quite a rarity now, actually. I don't think there's any kind of invasive or harmful use of animals involved. Maybe I know some companies that are actually animal focused companies of they have pets, like a pet chicken, and they'll occasionally take a feather or a cell, and that chicken is a family pet for them. So things like that. So we're kind of getting into gray areas here, but that doing that once to create like a cell-based chicken versus a factory farm, and at some point, if they can both produce the same amount of chicken meat, I mean, obviously, the cell-based situation is gonna change the world drastically for animals, make it significantly better if it gets to that point. And with technology being as it is, and AI and everything, it's probably going to happen as well.
I see. Okay. Well, so what's your I know your message and your videos out there. So what's your plans? Like what do you have new coming up that you're doing? I know you got the YouTube channel.
Mhm.
What's the new things or new ways you found out to get this message out, or you just keep doing the same thing you've been doing?
No, I've got other projects. Confident. I've got one big confidential project that I'll be revealing hopefully in the next year or so. That'll make hopefully a big splash and a big change for animals. I also do a bi-weekly news podcast as well, a live news podcast where we cover everything that's going on in the world and try and bring the animal related news to people in a way that can help animals with the raising the awareness and the knowledge of that. And the other things that I've been working on, I also have a Substack that I'm writing about all the things I'm learning and hoping to kind of guide activists and advocates in the right way. That's what I've been kind of focusing on. So things like how to encourage people to change their behaviors, and things that I think may be holding back that as well. And so this I think is quite important for us as a global community or a global movement, is that we know how to communicate and we know how to put these messages across in a way that is actually going to make people consider changing their behavior versus just kind of, I don't know, just dropping facts on people, which hasn't really been known to change that many people. It's not. So there's a lot to that though. So that's a big complex topic that I'm trying to cover as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm up to right now.
Sure. Now, last question we have, I think, would be there's something called the carnivore diet, where
Hmm.
become more popular today amongst Hollywood and all these stars, where they're only eating meat and they're claiming all these great health benefits. Now, I
Yeah.
personally know why, from a health standpoint, they might have some health success, and I also know how bad ultimately that is. But from an animal activist standpoint, what do you say to somebody that says, "Well, was very sick and I went on this carnivore diet and I'm showing improvements in my health"?
Yes, it's an elimination diet, right? it doesn't it doesn't have everything you need to be healthy over a long term. And even the person, one of the fathers of this diet, Sean Baker, he even admitted on a podcast that he doesn't know the long-term impact of this diet. Okay, so even one of the people who literally made an entire living out of it, wrote books about it, even he says, I don't know long-term if this is good or bad, right? And so that being the case, you can feel really good on an elimination diet, because if you've got a health problem and you haven't figured out what's causing it, and you eliminate practically every food but one food group, or one small amount of foods, chances are you might have eliminated the food causing your problems, and then your problems go away. If you start eating those foods again, your problems come back. That doesn't mean the food is bad. It means you've not fixed the problem that was causing your issue with that food, right? So in terms of why people say, "Oh, I feel great," well, yeah, that's probably why. In terms of why it's an issue, well, you're not dealing with the underlying cause of the problem. You are going to run into more severe problems in the future, as we've been seeing more and more of these long-term carnivores now having severe issues. Just go online and check out a group called Carnivore Cringe. There's somebody who's in one of these big Facebook groups full of carnivore dieters, and it's just screenshot after screenshot of people having all sorts of insane problems with their digestion, with their skin, there's one guy who was oozing some kind of liquid out of his hands. I believe I don't know, this came up recently. His hands went all yellow after some time on a carnivore. It's just not great. In terms of the ethical reasons not to do it, I mean, it's as simple as this. If you want to live healthily, and I understand that, and that's great. Try and live healthily. But I don't think us living healthily doesn't have to come at the expense of breeding and violating and killing another animal that just wants to live as much as you want to live, that doesn't want to be bred into this world to be a product for your plate. And the beauty is, you don't have to do that to them. You don't have to. You can respect animals, and you can find your health in other ways, like you are, for example. There are ways to be incredibly healthy, optimal health, as healthy as you want to be, even without involving animals in that process. And that is a far more ethical way of doing it, for sure. It might be more convenient to do it the other way. It might be more convenient to just go to the shop and pick up animal products, but it doesn't mean it's a good way of living. When animals are concerned, it's definitely not a good way of living.
Sure. Well, I appreciate all you're doing, and I'm really excited about your passion and your. I want to recommend everyone definitely get to your YouTube channel. I'm going to put the link below, because such great topics you cover, and I appreciate you taking the time out to be here, and keep up the great work you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and tell everybody your website. I'll post it below. But
Mhm.
what's the website they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's fine. If people want to come and check out my work, it's just David Rams on YouTube. If you wanted to DM me or message or anything like that, you could do it on Instagram. If you have Instagram, it's just David Rams on Instagram as well. Or my email address is itsdavidrams@gmail.com if you wanted to send me an email.
Wonderful. Everybody get to those links. Thank you for watching, everybody. And I don't make these videos just to preach to the choir here. Please share these videos with people you know that are struggling with not having any issue with harming and consuming animals, and let them see it, and start a conversation with them about it, and try to pique their interest. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, David, for being here, and have a great world life, everybody. Thank you.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.